ado, I wanted to introduce Gunnar Esiason, who is 26 years old, living with cystic fibrosis. After being diagnosed at 2 years old, his parents founded the Gunnar Esiason Foundation. Since then, Gunnar's grown to live his life despite CF. He played 3 varsity sports in high school, graduated from Boston College in 4 years, and now works as a cystic fibrosis patient advocate with the foundation that his parents started. He's also the head coach of his high school alma mater's varsity ice hockey team, making him the youngest head coach on the Long Island. Gunnar's learned that success with cystic fibrosis is possible, and he hopes to share that with the audience tonight. And we do have a short video.
There's a life expectancy with the disease. Cystic fibrosis is a genetically inherited disease, primarily goes after the respiratory system and the digestive tract. CF is a part of my life, and it's something that I deal with every single day. I can either go after it, or I can let it come back after me and win. The choice is easy. I'm going to go after it.
Two dinners combined will raise over $5 million, so thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much.
The more I say is to get up out of bed every morning and get on for that, regardless of how I'm feeling, and that allows me to win the CF. Gunnar Esiason, I'm making a podcast series. Hey guys, I'm from Boston College. It's important to stay active because it keeps the air moving in and out of the lungs. And when you use the computer string microwave frequency, shoot my needs. CF is a physical disease, it's also an emotional burden that a lot of us carry. Winning in my mind means overcoming a challenge, feeling good about yourself, and doing something that you love doing. The textbook is not going to tell me how I'm going to live.
So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Gunnar Esiason.
Hello everyone, I'm Gunnar Esiason. I'm actually 27 years old. I turned 27 about a month ago now. I am living with cystic fibrosis, obviously. I was diagnosed at age 2 after being misdiagnosed negative right after birth. Real quick, I want to take a bunch of questions here at the end of my little talk here. The reason being because I don't want to get rushed by every single person here to ask about their specific kid. If you have a question, everyone else wants to know the answer to that question as well. Okay? You can ask about anything. You can talk about my poop after I got my feet. All right? Did it change? Did it not change? It didn't. First, a little bit about the Gunnar Esiason Foundation. We were founded in 1993, right after I was diagnosed. To date, we've raised about $130 million in the fight against cystic fibrosis. And a lot of that money goes right back to the patients via forms of college scholarship grants. We give lung transplant grants to patients who are in that part of the disease. We have educational resources, podcasts. You can find me on iTunes. I also have a website, GunnarEsiason.com. Good luck spelling that. And we also have Team Boomer. Go to teamboomer.org. And that's where we encourage people with cystic fibrosis to be athletic, active, participate in 5Ks. You can participate in 5Ks, marathons, whatever your crazy person likes to run. I don't like running, so I don't like Team Boomer actually, but I like our clothing. But first I'm going to talk about my life with cystic fibrosis, what I've learned over the years, and then like I said, we'll get to some questions. I was obviously misdiagnosed, finally diagnosed at age 2, but the early years were pretty easy, went pretty smooth. It was about the time I was in first grade, 6 or 7 years old, that I really finally understood what cystic fibrosis was. At the time, I was still being seen at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. My dad was actually in his final year at the NFL, playing with the Cincinnati Bengals. So my care was still oriented in Cincinnati. And so one morning, it was a Friday, my dad had a game on Sunday. Friday morning, really early, about 6 a.m., my parents woke me up, and it was time to go to the doctor. I'd never been to the doctor that early. We got into the car, and it was very, very tense. Right? I remember, sort of kind of waking up, but I remember my parents being very weird about something. Right? My dad was driving, my mom was in the passenger seat, I was in the back seat, and they just were different. Finally, about halfway from our home to the hospital, my dad turned around and said, "Gunnar, this isn't gonna hurt." You just offered that up. Now, I know there's a parenting handbook that all of you get when you first have a child. And on the first page of that parenting handbook, the one thing it says is never tell your child it's never going to hurt. So my dad obviously didn't listen to the parenting handbook, and he continued to say that for the rest of the car ride. "Gunnar, this isn't gonna hurt. Gunnar, this isn't gonna hurt." And I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? You know, everything's good in my life. I'm 6, 7 years old. Things are okay. And he just kept saying it. He's like, you know, what the hell's going on here? So finally we get to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Instead of going left to the Cystic Fibrosis unit, we go right, and we go into this room called interventional radiology. You all know what interventional radiology is? You know what happens there? Yes, we all get PICC lines. They're amazing. I was about to get my first one ever. So we go into interventional radiology, they strip me down, they put me in a hospital gown. That was the first for me. Hospital gowns, if you've ever been in one, they suck. Right? You try to time it back, it never works. Your ass hangs out the back. It's just a disaster. Cystic fibrosis, where are you guys? You have $4 billion. We need better hospital gowns. Put that at the top of the list. Right? Well, Dr. Boyle and Bethesda, please. So they had me in the hospital gown. We're now sitting on the gurney, and an anesthesiologist walks in and can tell that I'm a little disoriented, right? So the anesthesiologist walks in and goes, you know, we can see Gunner's a little anxious, have him drink this. It'll calm him down, he'll feel better. But like any child, I'm not gonna drink medication, right? Does any child ever want to drink medication? Even the bubblegum flavor? It sucks, it's horrendous. No one wants to drink that stuff. So they, you know, I put it to my nose and they finally told me something like Versed. I gotta tell you, had I known what that was and what it would do now, give me more of that stuff, bring it up. Sadly, 6-year-old Gunnar didn't. So they sat there for about 15, 20 minutes trying to get me to drink it. I'm now crying. My dad continues to tell me, this isn't going to hurt. Just drink the stuff, it'll make you feel good. I'm like, what does that even mean? They finally bring an Irish nurse in. Let me show you how we do it in the old country. I'm like, what? My mom was like, what is this turning into? So finally, after a half hour, 45 minutes of this like just disaster that has happened in the little like pre-operative area. This is also the old days of the hospital, so you can kind of just go wherever you want it. In the early 90s. So finally, the anesthesiologist walks back in, and she's like, has Gunnar drank the Versed yet? And my parents are like, no, we're trying. I'm now in tears. And you know, everyone's all tense. My dad's still saying it's not going to hurt. And finally, the anesthesiologist is like, well, we need Gunnar to drink this so that he'll sit still during the procedure. Because if he's moving around, it's really going to hurt. Now, the moment I heard that, I jumped off my parents' lap on the gurney that we were sitting on. I looked my dad square in the eye, and I said, you lied. And I ran away. I ran out the open door, made a right down the hall, and ran into the lobby. Now, the lobby is now, of the main hospital is now open for business. About 8 o'clock, so the hospital is very, very crowded. And there comes a child running through the open lobby of the hospital wearing the shitty hospital gown. And the starting quarterback, the Cincinnati Bengals, following him. Oh my God, it's Phil Sims. We had just been on the cover of Sports Illustrated a few years ago, Father of the Year, right? Chasing his belligerent child. I'm now running through the hospital. Instead of making a left out of the hospital doors, I make a right, and I find myself in like one of those crazy hallways that leads to the door that's a biohazard. You know, you all know those doors in the hospital. It's like, what the hell is behind this door? I was about to find out. I walked down the hallway, and I tried to push the door open. I couldn't get it open. It was like you had to use a key card. Now there's people in the hallway staring at us. Like, what is wrong with this child? And my dad comes running down the hall. He's like, please, like, you have to quiet. This is just making a scene. You're making me look bad. That's all about him, right? Making me look bad. This is not good for any of us. This is not good for CF. Now you're thinking big picture. I will do whatever you want me to do. And the moment he said that, I became a businessman. I said, I want a Nintendo. get you a Nintendo. Please just quiet down, stop crying, get off the handicap railing. You're not handicapped, get off the railing. So I let go of the handicap railing, and we went back into the interventional radiology unit. They held me down, they put the tape line in, and then 3 days later, I became the most popular kid in first grade because I had a Nintendo. But that's also how I figured out that I was very different from everyone else. That's how I figured out that I had cystic fibrosis, and not everyone else in my classroom was going through such a traumatic experience in the children's hospital. This is a very unique thing to my experience. And you go through childhood and the early years, and school is like a petri dish. It's a breeding ground for illness. But every kid's got to go through it. It's like build the immune system. It's important to have those early childhood memories. But you work your way through it, and you start to sort of have a responsibility over your care. I start to realize what the pulmozyme is, what the albuterol is. This is the old days of CS. That's all we had. You go to the doctor, you're like, here's the albuterol, the pulmozyme, good luck. Now you get the Orkambi, and they say good luck. But no, I progressed through childhood, and finally I got to 6th, 7th, 8th grade, middle school, where there's the hormones, there's all this BS that goes on with kids. And one day I came home I was in 7th grade, and I came home and I told my parents, I was like, Mom and Dad, guess what? The 8th grade girls have invited me to a party. And my dad was like, oh yeah, this is great. My mom was like, holy crap, what is happening to my son? And they're like, okay, well, maybe you'll go to it, we'll see. This is Thursday, the party's on Friday. And we'll talk about it, and we'll get the answer in the morning. So behind closed doors, I never knew this conversation happened until many years later. My parents had this conversation that would only happen in the CF household. It was the middle of flu season, it was January. And they discussed whether or not I should be allowed to go to this party because they knew exactly what was going to happen. Let's spin the bottle or whatever. And my mom was concerned that I would kiss a girl and then I would come down with the flu or something like that because of some gross, unhygienic person that I was going to school with. Because every mom thinks that way. And it's like worst case scenario. And they talked about, they also discussed that it was their goal from the early outset that my childhood was supposed to be as a normal American childhood as possible. I was going to play sports. My parents threw me on the ice when I was 6 or 7 years old to play ice hockey. I played flag football. I played soccer. I played violin for a day. I thought I was going to be Beethoven. It did not work out. My mom was all happy about that, then their dream was crushed. But they enrolled me in all these things, and they finally came back to that Gunnar should have this experience of a normal middle school American, and he should go experience this party. So Friday morning, my parents told me the news that I was going to be allowed to go to the party. Now I was all excited. It's going to be a great day at school. Me and my buddies, the 3 of the buddies were invited. The rest of our friends were not invited, so we would be kind of walking around like this. The 8th grade girls invited us, not you. It sucks. So I came home that night, and the one condition to going to the party was that I wasn't allowed to go. I had to go with my dad. My dad had to drive me in the car, and I wasn't allowed to go with other friends. I had to meet the friends there. So the entire car ride to, it's another car ride with Gunnar and Boomer. Where the entire car ride to this party, my dad is now talking to me about being a gentleman and doing the right thing and making good decisions. I'm like, what the hell is he talking about again? He's bestowing all this knowledge on me in car rides, and I'm just like going right over my head. I'm like, turn the talk radio off and put the music on or something. So finally, he's like, just have fun and call us when you're ready to leave, and we'll be back. And we go to dinner with Mom, and then we'll come pick you up. So they drop me off. They go to dinner. My mom and dad obviously had another conversation. I found out like many years later about how nervous they were, but they were also excited for me, and they couldn't really figure out what was the right emotion for it. Probably a little nervous. It's like the first day of school kind of thing. So finally, about 3 hours later, my dad comes back to the family, to the home of the family that's hosting the party, calls inside. I come out. Now, my dad said to this day he felt like a new person came out of the house. He felt the Fonz from Happy Days was walking out of the house. He said I had a smile on my face that was the biggest he's ever seen. I got in the car and he's like, Gunnar, well, how was it? Did you have a good time? And I said, Dad, you'll never believe it. Guess what? You're going to be so proud of me. And he said, what? Well, what? I said, Dad, I won. He goes, what do you mean you won? I said, I won, spin the bottle. He said, Gunnar, I didn't know you could win spin the bottle. I said, well, I won because I kissed the most girls of anyone at the party. Now, my dad had an angel on one shoulder and a devil on one shoulder moment. He's like, oh my God, yes, my son's a player. Oh my God, no, Cheryl's gonna kill me. So now the car ride back home is, do not tell your mother this is a guy thing. This is a big secret. This is a father-son thing. You don't have to tell your mother. She doesn't have to find out about this. We'll just say, had a good time, and you're never gonna go to a party again. And I was like, oh yeah, whatever, that's fine, cool, no big deal. I guess I'm a winner, you know, I'm not a loser, I'm having a good time. You know, you're finally happy. I mean, we've always talked about winning. I've always been competitive with my sister. I have a younger sister who would ever get better grades, who was on the A team and not the B team, who had, you know, me and my sister were always very competitive. But now I was finally a winner in something that Sydney was unable to compete in because she was in 6th grade. I'd also decided at that point that Sydney was never allowed to go to one of these parties. But anyways, we get home and I walk through the door. My mom goes, first one to see me, how was it? How was the party? I said, oh, it was a great time. We had some pizza, watched some movies. I have to give you treatments. Kind of very adult thing of me to do. And so I go in there, start the vest, do the treatments, get it over with, and go to bed. On the way from the treatment room to my bedroom, I'm intercepted by my sister. She's like a heat-seeking missile, like seek me out and like figure out that. She's like the gossip queen of school, even though she was in 6th grade. The whole thing ran through her. She thinks she's like 35 years old ever since she was born. She's not. She's a year younger than me. So she said, he goes, how was the party? Did you have a good time? Like, what happened? What do I have to look forward to next year when I'm in 7th grade? Well, I said, you don't have anything to look forward to, but this is what I experienced. I said, we played spin the bottle and I won. I kissed the most girls than any guy at the party. And she's like, wow, that's so cool. Who was it? I was like, well, Nina, Laura, Kelly. And she's like, oh my God, like they're so cute. They're so cute. You did such a good job. I have a cool big brother. That was like her big takeaway from the thing. So we go to bed. We wake up early next morning, early Saturday, because Cindy has soccer practice. I have hockey practice. Classic Saturday in this household was some sort of youth sports. So we come downstairs. I have to do treatments, but at first it's breakfast time. My sister is sitting at the table. My dad is sitting at the table. And no one is saying anything. The dogs are even sitting there obediently, which is a very unusual thing. Let me tell you something, there's something else we get into, but I turn the corner and my mom is standing with her back to the sink and her arms crossed like this. And that's the story of how I got grounded for a month along with my dad. But my parents quickly figured out that I didn't get sick in the party, that I had a normal childhood experience, and I was okay. And they realized that, oh, it's just a learning moment, it's a growing moment for Gunnar to experience along the way with cystic fibrosis. He had a normal childhood experience, and he went to the party, and he was fine. Yay. Yes, yeah. But from there you go to high school, right? And high school is where things change for people with cystic fibrosis. Because there, things start to quote unquote matter in the eyes of teenagers, right? Teenagers think they know everything and everything matters because it's the most important thing in the world at that specific moment, right? So you play sports, the sports all of a sudden become about winning, participation in the sport becomes based on your skill, not everyone gets equal playing time. If you're in the symphony, you're only gonna be on the symphony singing if you're good enough, or the choir rather, if you're good enough. And everything sort of becomes skill-based or how hard you're working and how good you are at something. So I got to the first day of high school and I decided that I wanted to play football. My dad had played football. I felt it was sort of in me to play football at the high school level. And in having that conversation about football, it's a very weird conversation for someone with CF to have with their parents because most people with CF, as you can see, are lean, right? I'm a very big guy. And I was much bigger. I was not any bigger in high school. So I had the conversation. I asked my dad. I figured he'd be the go-to person because he was the one who played and had the experience in it. And I said, Dad, can I play football? You know, it's something I really wanted to do and play high school football. I watched the movie Friday Night Lights. I kind of thought I could be that guy. Can I play? And my dad goes, well, you'll have to ask your mom. This is a decision your mom is going to make for us. These are real stories. These happen. So the next morning, I get up and I am empowered now by my dad to go ask my mom to play football. So I go up to my mom, I said, Mom, guess what? Dad said I can play football. So I had to let you know. All right, we'll sign you up. So I went to football, and football was really the first time that the team really became invested in my cystic fibrosis. Right, because when you're a young kid and you may not be showing a number of symptoms, or it's really just not a big part of your life, when you get to high school athletics, it becomes a huge part of things because you're running, you're exercising. And if you've ever seen a kid with CF exercise, it's a very violent thing. There's like snot flying everywhere, you get green shit flying out of your mouth. It's gross, but it feels good. It does. Endorphins. So my parents made it clear to the football coaches that I had cystic fibrosis. They talked about a number of warning signs that I had to look out for at the advice of my doctors. Everyone just wanted to be on the same page. I cough too. Everyone wanted to be on the same page about my CF in case something did go wrong and they could react. The best part about football, though, is that it's a real true team sport, right? The team is only as good as the weakest link. So by virtue of having CF, I was probably one of the weaker links initially in my football career, and every single person around me wanted to support me, right? Because if I was getting better, that means the team was getting better. You know, football teaches that to kids. And football went through. I played JV freshman, sophomore year. By the time junior year rolled around, I took over playing varsity starting quarterback halfway through junior year. ESPN even did a little thing on me. It was like one of those classic, like, sick kid inspires people videos. I mean, let's call it what it is. I was in there. That's what it is. No hiding it. It's one of those things where you get the goosebumps at the end. You're like, oh wow, Gunnar, yes. So, still on YouTube. You can go find it. Search Gunnar Esiason, ESPN. I had one shiny moment. No. So I had such a great experience. My junior year was amazing. I played a lot of hockey too. I was really feeling good. And then came time for standardized testing at the end of junior year, so I could think about going to college. And one afternoon, it was in the middle of May, or right around this time of year actually, I came home from the standardized test, and my parents said, how did it go? And I said, you'll never believe what happened. I actually fell asleep during the test. And my mom was like, oh my God, what the hell happened? My son's not gonna go to college. And I said, I don't know, I'm just not really feeling good. And then I just kind of collapsed. Of course, it's a phone call to the doctor. What happened? Gunnar's not feeling good. He's got a really high fever. They go rushing to the doctor. It turns out I have mono. So as it turns out, you can get sick from kissing girls. There is truth to that, apparently. So I had mono, and mono basically ravaged my body. Right, over the course of 2 or 3 months, I lost 20 pounds. I lost all of my muscle mass. I completely fell out of physical playing shape. Right, I could not participate in off-season activities for the football team. I couldn't participate in off-season activities for my hockey team. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't run. I couldn't stay in shape. Nothing was working. My lung function for the first time in my life was going down, and it was not coming back up. Right, it was a very serious thing that I was going through in the summer between my junior and senior year. It was a very horrendous, scary thing to be going through. And it was just one of those things that was, I don't think I understood the gravity of the situation until many years later. But in the moment, I was like, why am I just getting so sick? I just keep going on IVs, they're not working. What the hell is wrong with me? I'm going to the doctor's not fixing anything. You know, my whole sort of concept of cystic fibrosis was sort of changed. So then comes August. We come to the preseason camp, and I'm going into camp thinking that I'm going to be the starting quarterback of the high school football team, and I'm like, how the hell am I going to do this? All right, I've worked all my life for this one moment to be the starting quarterback for my local high school football team, and I have to compete to do this. Right, I have to work even harder than I've already been working, just twice as hard as everyone else. Now I'm going to have to work even harder to continue to maintain that role. So we get to about the first week of practice, and it's pretty tough. You know, everyone's pretty clear that I'm having a much more difficult time than I normally do. But then finally we get to the second week of practice, and we get stuck into a conditioning drill. It's one of those drills where you run up and down the field a bunch of times and you're doing push-ups. Probably because one of the players was goofing off, probably me. And so the coaches make us do push-ups, right? So we're going down, doing 15, 20, 30 push-ups, and about halfway through the set, my arms give out. right? I roll over, I look up, and everyone looking at me looks like they've just seen a ghost. I look down and my entire jersey is red. I had just coughed out a ton of blood. The first time in my life I've experienced that. Now, of course, you're dealing with a bunch of high school football coaches and kids looking at this is like, what the hell just happened to Gunnar? And I'm like, what the hell did everyone think just happened? And I am now stuck in a position where I'm like, okay, can I breathe? Is this a dream? What's happening? And I finally understand that I'm breathing. I'm like, okay, we just have to call my mom. That's who we need to call. Don't call 911, call my mom. So anytime my mom's caller ID says the number from the school, she's gonna pick it up. So we call my mom, she picks it up, she's like, okay, is Gunnar okay? I'll come right there, we'll get him to the hospital. She calls the phone, she calls Columbia in New York City, and they let them know that we're coming in. We get to Columbia, and the doctor's like, okay, obviously what we've been doing for the past couple months has not been working. We have to do a number of other tests. Now, we're probably gonna have to do long-term IVs, depending on what comes back from that test. This may put your football season in jeopardy. If we have to go down this course, you may not be able to play football this year. And to hear that as a 17-year-old was like having your entire world ripped out from under you, right? I had looked forward to my entire life playing my senior year of football, and it was about to be taken away from me based on one conversation with the doctor. So we went back, went home, I spoke to my dad about it, he sort of sympathized, said, all right, let's see what the test says, we'll get whatever it was done, and we'll see what happens. Days go by, we go in for the procedure to get the test, and it's bronchoscopy. And we waited 2 days to see what the results of the bronchoscopy were. By the way, those suck. I don't care what that tells you. So we finally get the results from the bronchoscopy. The doctor calls us in, and it said what it said. And she's like, we're gonna have to do a long-term course of IVs here. Your football season's done, or we can get you through the rest of the season, but that may put your hockey season in jeopardy. You're gonna have to choose one or the other. Hopefully they work, and hopefully you can play hockey. But we'll let you make the decision with your family when you go home. So we go home. Now I'm like in tears, right? I'm a 17-year-old kid, his entire life has just been ripped out from underneath him. There's, everything is so magnified at that age that there's no future, obviously, for me. So I come home and I tell my dad, I'm like, Dad, listen, doctor doesn't think I'm going to play football anymore. Like, what do I do? And he said, well, Gunnar, you suck at football anyways. You're a far better hockey player, but you really do suck at football. And it was the first time he'd ever given me criticism of my football skill, or lack thereof, apparently. And what he was really trying to tell me was that I have to be very, very aggressive with my CF care. He said if you sit on something, or what he was trying to tell me at a young age, and this was his way of doing it, was that by sitting on an issue and letting an issue just last and linger, it was not ever going to get resolved, it was only going to get worse. It had to be something that was resolved and taken care of in the here and now. So I said, okay, I guess I do suck at football, let's go. We'll start the course of treatments, and we'll hope for the best so that hopefully I can play hockey. So we go in, get the pick line placed. I didn't cry, didn't run away this time. Put the verse in. And away we went. 3 or 4 weeks later, my issue was clearing up and hockey season was around the corner. I was able to play ice hockey. It suddenly went away. And a little cliche, I missed scoring a goal in the first game. I was like, well, where's the ESPN for that moment, right? so played ice hockey. And then after that, after my health sort of stabilized throughout the remainder of my senior year, then became time to think about college. Where do I go for college? Can I get away? Should I go local? I wanted to get away because I wanted to get away from my parents. Please, for the love of God, leave them in the rearview mirror. Please. But my parents set a number of restrictions on where I could look for college. Both my parents went to Maryland, so I said I wasn't allowed to go to Duke. But their real restrictions were there had to be a cystic fibrosis center in that city or within an hour radius, right? In case something went wrong, I had to be able to get care as needed. And I had to be within a manageable drive to home. So I settled on Boston College, and obviously Boston Children's Hospital, Mass General, they have CS centers there. So my care was sort of managed between Boston Children's and Columbia back at home. So, but when you get to college, every kid with cystic fibrosis is faced with an immediate challenge the first day of school. Can anyone guess what that challenge is? How do I tell these new people that I have cystic fibrosis, right? Because a lot of times kids will go off to college and they'll keep it a secret. And it is a disaster when that happens. Right, so I was faced with the challenge day one. How do I tell these new kids that I have cystic fibrosis? So my college roommate was actually one of my best friends from high school. One of the kids who failed to respond when I coughed up blood. But we got over that and he became trusted by my parents. He actually dated my sister. But my best friend from high school was my college roommate in DC. And we sort of recognized that I was going to have to come out with my CF right away. So the way we decided to navigate this was that we were going to have a bunch of people over to the room and just see how it went. So the first day of college is like, it's a crazy little time, right? Like, first week of school is no parents, no rules kind of thing. We opened the door and we sort of had a meeting of the new kids in our room. For whatever reason, our room became the room that everyone hung out in, probably because of the disability service that gave us the best room in the hall. There are perks I can see. That is one of them. So we know we had my disabilities requirement of Boston College was to have a bathroom in my room, was to have a space for my treatments, and air conditioning. That's pretty much it. And BC has sort of accommodated us as far as the room goes. So it was the first night, we had a bunch of people into the room, and there's probably 11 or 12 of us in there drinking illegal beverages, and we're 18. And finally I'm like, you know what, this is a good time as any, I'm just gonna do it. I go into my bedroom, I grab a nebulizer and the vest, and I lug it out into the common room, and I just throw it on, right? Throw the vest on, start doing my toby. And the kids in the room are like, what the hell is going on? Just total quiet, except for the pounding of the vest. And no help from the roommate, by the way. He's just sitting there like, what the hell did I get myself into by living with this kid? Finally, one of the very brave souls of the new kids in the room looks at me and looks at the nebulizer and goes, so are you gonna pass that or what? I said, that's not what this is. You sick, twisted son of a bitch. Then I explained this. I have cystic fibrosis. And then, of course, met again with crickets. Like just total quietness. Because everyone knows what CF is from one day of biology class in 9th grade. It's just something that kills me. Right? That's what everyone knows it as. And now I'm there as a physical manifestation of that in their presence. And they have no idea to handle that. Finally, another brave soul is like, oh my God, my sister's uncle's best friend's dad's cousin twice removed has CF. I'm like, oh my God, how is he? What else am I supposed to ask? I have no idea, I've never met him. My mom talks about it all the time. I'm like, well, okay, that's very good for him, but I have CF too. And then I explained what cystic fibrosis was in very, very basic sense. I said, I have a cough, I have lung issues, I fart a lot, and my poop smells like crap. And you all are gonna have to live with it right now. And they did. Of those 11 or 12 kids in that room that one day, 9 or 10 of them are still my best friends. And a number of them have done significant fundraising for the Gunnar Esiason Foundation, including running marathons, the Boston Marathon, New York City Marathon, Chicago Marathon, which you can sign up for at teamover.org. But they all did it. And in that moment, I realized that my support system was growing. It all of a sudden grew exponentially. In high school and at home, you have like your close family ties of friends, right? You have your doctor, of course, part of your support team. The care team is part of the support team. Immediate family members, good friends. The people next door. When mom and dad want to have a date in the city or whatever, you leave the kid with the kid next door, and they have to know how to do treatments. But in college, the support team all of a sudden grows to be enormous, right? It becomes your friends, it becomes the administration that has to deal with the disabilities issues, and it becomes the healthcare, whatever the infirmary, whatever they call it. Is that what they still call it these days? And then there's also the professors, right? The professors are also part of the sport team in good ways and bad. 98% of the professors that you run into are really good people. The other 2% are tenured assholes, right? And those people just want to see themselves succeed, no one else. But in college, the support system has to grow. It's the only way kids with CF can be successful in college. And I'll give you a quick anecdote. If you go to a party or whatever, people love to smoke cigarettes in college for some reason. But when you have respiratory illness and you're putting yourself into those situations, it can be a little ugly. So you go to parties and someone lights up a cigarette or whatever, and all of a sudden it becomes part of your friend's problem too, right? Do they want to move vocations? Are they willing to tell that kid to put the cigarette out? What happens? Do you have another plan in mind? Luckily for me, a lot of my friends were very forward-thinking. Whenever we came across a situation like that, it was always handled by them, not me, right? The support system is really, really critical in college. Now, my sister also followed me to college. She was a year younger than me, as I've said, so she came to BC as well. And she became sort of the first line of defense, sort of my mom's eyes and ears. But I also found out that my roommates and my close friends were also my mom's eyes and ears. After the first family weekend at BC, which is usually like 2 or 3 weeks into college, it's pretty funny how they do family weekend. It's like you give the kids away and then they gotta come right back. And my mom, actually, what she did was, behind my back, she got my friends' phone numbers, right? So she got my roommate's phone number, which she already had because we went to high school together, but also with some of my new friends who she could tell that were becoming my good friends. And what she would do is she would periodically text them, how's Gunnar's cough? What's Gunnar's cough sound like? Is he sleeping enough? Is he doing his treatments? As if they thought I was going to lie about not doing my treatments. But is he going to the bathroom more and more frequently? Is he eating? What is he eating? Is he drinking too much beer? What is going on? My mom was was like Facebook information gathering from it's too soon to say that. My mom was information gathering for my friends because she had my best interests in mind. As much as I wanted to believe that I was leaving them in the rearview mirror, my mom's, like any CF mom here, has the best interest in mind of their kids. And that's what my mom was doing. My mom was periodically checking on me through my friends. And wouldn't you know it, whenever I was feeling a little crappy and I was hesitant to call home and tell them I wasn't feeling good, my mom would text me and be like, oh, how are you doing? Just out of nowhere, how are you doing? Oh, actually, funny you say that, I'm not doing so well. And we sort of quickly realized that I was very hesitant to call home and say that I wasn't feeling good. Why? Because I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to miss college days. I didn't want to miss college weekends. I didn't want to miss going to parties with girls. It was all part of the college experience that I wanted to have, and that my CF was going to start interrupting. And one very specific moment, my sophomore year, it did interrupt in a very big way. I all of a sudden, I had like a really high fever. I started throwing up. It was crazy. My friends immediately contacted my sister, who lived on the other part of campus. Sydney called home. What's wrong? Any call home from Sydney on behalf of me obviously starts the process of the alarms, right? Finally, Sydney gets to me and it's like, okay, Gunnar has to go to the hospital. So we go down to the emergency room. Sydney drives me down to the emergency room. That was nothing BC afforded us, the ability to have a car on campus by virtue of having a disability. But so we go to the emergency room. Very quickly that I have a flu-like virus of some sort. So we have to start immediate treatment or whatever. After I sort of stabilize, my parents think it's in my best interest to come home for a few days, back to New York, and we'll see how it goes. I'm now home for 3 or 4 days, and all of a sudden I develop crippling abdominal pains. It turns out I have pancreatitis. Do you know what that is? It is like the worst thing ever. It really sucks, right? I will tell you, it would not wish on the worst on me. It's horrendous. And the way it was treated was that I was fasting. They would not let me eat for a number of days. Right, so they finally, after pancreatitis started to sort of go away after a day or two of not eating or whatever, and finally having a reduced diet, I weighed myself and I weighed 130 pounds. I'm 6'3". That's very, very underweight. And the doctor had a very candid conversation with me and said, Gunnar, I think it's time we start thinking about a feeding tube. And I have resented my entire life the idea of a feeding tube. Right? My parents kind of pushed it on me. They always used, they weaponized feeding tube. You know, if you don't finish your dinner, we have to get a feeding tube, that kind of thing. And it's like we have to force feed you, you know, put the seed in your mouth and like just shove food in your mouth. My parents did that. They didn't do that, but they weaponized it that way. And so finally, I sort of had a come to Gunnar moment. And I was like, okay, maybe I do need this because I do feel pretty crappy. And finally, as it turns out, my doctor in New York was in cahoots with my doctor in Boston. My doctor in Boston explained a patient outcome of his or a patient experience of his that had a feeding tube. And he put it in a very athletic sense. You know, as an athletic guy, he said, you know, we gave a feeding tube to an adult patient. Next thing you know, she was putting on weight, she was putting on muscle mass, they just started competing in CrossFit games, this, that, and the other thing. I was like, oh wow, that sounds pretty good. So I blindly agreed to the feeding tube. And a week after my sophomore year of college ended, I came home to New York, surgery place. The surgery for the feeding tube is super easy. It's way easier than the bronchoscopy for whatever reason. So they placed the feeding tube, and I remember coming out of the surgery, the operative room, and for some reason when you're in a hospital, they love to give you really, really important information when you're coming out of an anesthetic case. I have no experience with a feeding tube. I've never even met anyone with a feeding tube, and I'm like, got one eye open, and they're like, okay, this is how you work it. If you have an issue, you need to call us. This is what you should look out for. And I'm like, all right, yeah, sounds great. And they go, okay, do you have any questions? I said, well, can I put alcohol in my feeding tube? And the nurse was like, honey, you're not the first one to ask. So now I come back to DC, and after having the feeding tube for a summer, you have to overcome the taking your shirt off thing. What the feeding tube looks like on the beach, what it looks like at the pool, coming into grips with the overnight feeds, learning how to sleep on your back, the whole deal that goes with the feeding tube that they were trying to tell me when I was coming out of the surgery, but I had to learn for myself because I didn't remember anything they said. So finally I get to college, and I'm pretty confident with my feeding tube, and I think it looks all right. I'm starting to feel a lot better. I put on 15, 20 pounds over the course of the summer, which was rapid weight gain. I noticed my hair was growing in thicker. I stopped getting sunburns, which I had been dealing with chronic sunburns for my entire life. All of a sudden they went away. I started to be able to fight off colds. I felt better, I had more energy. I stopped eating breakfast, which I already hated because I would wake up feeling full in the morning. But one winter afternoon, one winter evening at BC, I mean, you guys get the same winters up here as they do in Boston. When it's like so freaking cold, you don't want to go outside, it's just too brutal to do anything. There were a bunch of us in the room again, and probably half the people knew that I had CF, the other half kind of didn't. It was like kind of a generally known thing that I had CF, but if you didn't really know me, there's really no reason to now. I was like, you know what, I need to spice up this night a little bit. So I walk into my room, I grab my feeding tube, a beer funnel, and a Natty Light. Because kids only drink Natural Light in college, in college. I wasn't on the Bud Light, bug it. So I said, guys, watch this. Took my shirt off, attached the feeding tube, put the beer funnel in, and I now hold the record at Boston College for the fastest beer funnel time as any undergrad. Still stands to this day. Half the kids in the room are like, holy crap, what the hell did I just see? Because they didn't know I had CF. And meanwhile, one of my friends, one of my really good friends, looks at me and goes, Gunnar, you've been given a gift. You can get drunk without drinking. And I said, Max, I don't know if I'd call this a gift. 2 hours later, the beer came right back up. Do not recommend that to other patients. In fact, it's the only time I ever did. But no, the feeding tube really made a huge impact in my life. And it was very vindicating for my parents because they were like, we told you so, we told you so. Whenever the parents get to say, we told you so, it's a huge win for the parents. My dad continues to do that today. He's like, see, I told you would like running. Come on, 27 years old, relax. I made it this far. But finally, my senior year came around, and it was right before college graduation. It was a couple months, it was probably February, that I was kind of thinking about what I was going to do next. Obviously I had been thinking about what I was going to do next. My plan was to go to grad school. I been studying for the LSATs. I had been looking at schools to go to. For some reason, I wanted to be a lawyer. God knows why. But I ended up catching a really bad bout, and I developed pneumonia twice in a matter of 2.5 months right before graduation. It was horrendous. I remember getting to my college graduation and sort of looking at it like a finish line, as much as a moment of pride that it really should be. I saw it as, just get me out of here. My life needs to change so I can get back in control, but otherwise I'm going to continue this really, really nasty decline. And so for the entire summer after I graduated college, my dad was like, maybe we'll put the law school thing off, see what happens. So I had to put those plans on hold. I stopped studying the LSAT. I just really focused on my health. And it was a really hard time for me because the rest of my friends were getting jobs. They were really successful out of school. They were making money. And I was just sitting at home on the couch really trying to get myself feeling good. I mean, I couldn't even go play hockey. That's how sick I was. Because the pneumonia just really ravaged my lungs. And finally, about September, October, I sort of started to stabilize a little bit. And my doctor recommended, she goes, you know what, Gunnar? You're a good candidate for clinical trials. Let's enroll you into clinical trials. And I was like, all right, I've never done this. But at least it'll be something that I can do. It gave me sort of sense and purpose to wake up in the morning, go to the hospital, and be a lab rat. And after about a visit or two of clinical trial, I had sort of an epiphany. And my epiphany was that in cystic fibrosis, there are not enough patients in our patient community to say no when a doctor approaches you about being a candidate for a clinical trial. Obviously, it's up to the patients. But in CF, every single one of us has to play our part. Right? And the people that are developing these medications, I'm not talking about just the big sexy medications, I'm talking about the ones that go and look at GI symptoms or taking azithromycin or whatever. The doctors need to know whether or not these things work. And going into a clinical trial and participating in a clinical trial that A, works and B, fails are equally important, right? Because they have to know what direction the medications need to go in. So after doing that, I really fell in love with clinical trials. And I've since become a big advocate for enrolling in clinical trials. It's a pain in the ass. I'll be the first to tell you it sucks because they just poke you with needles. It's annoying. But it is a huge, huge part of advancing cystic fibrosis care, right? Because we have the ability now to try all these medications that the patients living in the 60s, 70s, and 80s never even had the opportunity to try. They didn't even have Pulmazine, right? They had albuterol, they had chest PT, and they had a handful of antibiotics, right? That's all it was. We now have the ability to really make a difference in cystic fibrosis care by virtue of even being a patient, right? So my health began to stabilize, and then I took a role in BEF. And there, what I do is I'm on our college scholarship grant committee, so I talk to CF patients, and I really go out to the community and I figure out what people need, where CFF is letting people short. That's kind of my job role, no offense. And what that's really done is working, I found, has given me a real sense of purpose, right? It's important to be an active member of society and an active participant of society, right? And the reason that is because, people, you have a genetic illness, right? And you're immediately different from everyone else, right? And you can use that as a crutch, and some people do, as a reason to get out of things or not do things or sort of just go out their own and travel the world for a while they have time and stuff like that. But I found that being an active role, an active participant in society is incredibly fulfilling and in fact improves my health, right? It keeps me going. Because an object in motion will stay in motion, right? So what does an average day for an adult with cystic fibrosis look like, right? An adult that was born in the early 90s, late 80s, who may have some significant disease progression, right? We wake up in the morning, we do our treatments, we go to work, right? We have control of our lives, right? It's not regimented like being in high school or middle school or college with class. We have complete control of what we do, right? So it's up to us to exercise, to stay fit, to stay healthy, to use it as airway clearance. So what does an average week of exercise look like for me, right? This week I did the gym 3 times a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Played hockey on Monday night and went for a run yesterday. Thank God today is my day off. But that is an important part of critical care for cystic fibrosis. And I'll sort of wrap up here, but what I've found is that I can do the things that I want to do when I'm healthy. When I'm sick, those things are taken away from me, right? And that is my ultimate motivation. It's your job as parents here to prepare your kids for that inevitability, right? They may look at the treatments and be like, why am I doing this? They may not see benefit from it, because in reality, a lot of our treatments in CF are Band-Aids, right? If they're not used effectively, consistently, and as they're prescribed, they're not going to work, and the disease will spiral out of control very, very quickly, right? So it's your job as parents to drill that into your kids' heads. Because when they get to be my age, they're going to have the ability to do whatever they want, work however they want, do whatever they want in their lives, and lead whatever life they want to lead as long as they have their health, right? And we are fortunate enough to be in the golden age of CF drug development, where kids with CF born today or living today will have the opportunities to do whatever they want, right? They will have opportunities to do things that people from my generation never had, right? And it's your responsibility as parents to give them those opportunities. And I'll say this, the last thing is, kids with CF have a very inner sense of resilience that the rest of the general population wishes they had. It's your job to pull that out of them. All right, well, thanks for having me tonight, and I'm happy to
for questions, if anyone has some questions for Gunnar.
Can you shotgun up your on stage for us?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you still use the feeding tube every night?
Do I still use the feeding tube? Yes, I do. I do use the feeding tube every night. Like, for example, I won't use the feeding tube tonight because it's one night of my trip. So it just doesn't make sense to bring it with me. I also eat normally, regularly. My caloric goal every day is between 4,000 to 5,000 calories. Still very lean, right? The best thing about the feeding tube, though, is I'm not advocating for every single patient, is that you get to control your diet completely, right? Use the medical nutrition, but I also blend things, right? I make super smoothies, and I just jam them through the feeding tube, right? It's awesome. I hate vegetables, but guess what? My stomach doesn't have taste buds. Right? So I utilize the feeding tube like a complete other mouth. Right? And that's why I think it really gave me another opportunity to sort of put weight on and really control my nutrition. Because in the old days of CF, I say the old days like I'm like 4 years old, but the old days of CF, we thought about calories as just calories coming from anywhere. Now you're a nutritionist, I don't know what nutritionist is here, you're around here somewhere maybe. Yes, hello. We'll tell you that the calories matter where they come from, right? A balanced diet is just as important for people with cystic fibrosis as calories are, right? You gotta watch sugar, you gotta watch all this stuff because it can lead to mucus and this, that, and the other thing. It's crazy. A lot of stuff in there. Don't go down that black hole. But the feeding tube gives the patient and the family the ability to control the nutrition 100%. That's probably the best part of it, I think.
So similar, what different kinds of exercises have you kind of experimented with and landed on as most effective for you?
So my favorite exercises. Well, my number one form of exercise is ice hockey. During the winter when I'm coaching ice hockey, I'm on the ice 3 or 4 times a week. And then during the off season, I play recreationally once a week. Actually, my dad plays ice hockey too. It's pretty funny. So we play men's league together, where athletes go to die. I'm also in the gym. I really like going to the gym. I'm not a big cardio guy, so the way I keep my heart rate up and suck air and stuff like that is I just don't rest a lot between sets. That's really a big exercise component for me. And then really within the last couple of years, I've started to run. I hate running, but I love the way that it makes me feel, right? Like I said earlier, when a kid with cystic fibrosis, or an adult now with CF runs or does whatever, it's really gross and violent looking, especially you should see the looks that I get when I go running, it's awesome. But I don't really care because I know how well it's gonna make me feel afterwards. I've basically figured out that being consistent with exercise is just as good as the best, right? That's what it's there for, and I have the ability to do that. I'm not gonna let that go to waste.
So some of us here are in clinical research. So what would be your advice to us as we see people like you coming in day to day?
My number one piece of advice to people working on the research side of it is to look at your patients as human beings, right? You come to clinical trials and you're all of a sudden looked at as like a lab rat, a number, a blinded number at that, or a subject. That's like the best thing. They always like to use words like they or the subject. We're human beings, right? And I think that clinical trials and clinical research is going to have to get to a point one day, we're in this precision medicine world, where we have to take into account the human element of the patient, right? That is the number one thing that I tell any care provider, doctors included, to look at your patients like people, right? Have conversations with them. You're going to find out things about their health in conversation. You're going to find out things that will improve their experience in the hospital or in clinic by just talking to them, right? Not everything is numbers, not everything is pseudomonas this, pseudomonas that, FEV that, FVC this. You know, there's more to the patient than the numbers on the screen.
You were recently talking about telemedicine and seeing advancements with that. Are you seeing actual places that are exploring that opportunity, or is that just something that you envision?
So you're talking about a Facebook post that I put today about telemedicine? Yes. It's nice, someone follows me. Gunnar Esiason on Facebook. Don't friend me, follow my public page, because I will not accept you. I'm also on Twitter. Hit me up there. So I talked about telemedicine today, and the context of it was that, especially in Western states, people are traveling significant distances for the Cystic Fibrosis Center, right? And out there in the West, they're starting to experiment with telemedicine and it's starting to work, right? Telemedicine is going to be the way of the future, but we're not probably not there yet. I do think that telemedicine is going to play a role in cystic fibrosis eventually, because it's going to cut down on cross-infection risk. You don't have to do it with other patients. And it's going to reduce the stress and pull down the barriers of compliance, right? It's important to get to your cystic fibrosis center however many times the doctor wants you there, right? Because it's the only way they're going to keep an eye on you. I love the app that was presented earlier, but still the doctor has to have eyes on you, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. And I think telemedicine eventually will allow patients to have that possibility.
Are your parents still involved quite a bit with your life and care, or are you?
Oh, my parents still involved? You should see you can ask my mom. You can call her. No, the parents' role in cystic fibrosis evolves over time. The best part I always say about moving from pediatric care to adult care is you cut out the middleman. Middleman is your parents. And adult patients want that freedom and independence. And it is adult team will tell you, you know what I'm talking about, you know what's up. Don't lie to me, say yes.
No, yeah, no, he's right.
When did you transition?
We'll get there. It's going to happen. All right? And it's going to suck at first for you guys, but then you'll come around. It's important for people with cystic fibrosis to feel like they have some independence, some freedom, some self-interest invested in their care, because then they're going to learn how to be motivated by their health, right? My parents are still highly involved. Although the middleman was cut out, I started going to appointments by myself and this, that, and the other thing. My parents all of a sudden go from the role of caregiver to advisor, right? Whenever I leave the hospital or clinic, my first call is to my parents immediately, right? This is what happened. I don't ever share FEV numbers with them ever. I will never do that. I don't ever share them online either, because I believe that's person's information and people put way too much emphasis on that. But I never share that information with my parents ever. I always say up, down, same. But then I tell them how the rest of the appointment went, because it's important for them to know. It's important for them to have information to give me correct information to make decisions, right? I transitioned to adult care when I was 19 years old. I did it after my freshman year of college. Looking back, I wish I would have done it before I went to college. It's different from patient to patient, I understand. I wish I would have done it when I was 18, right? And I'll tell you why. When I got to adult care, I felt like the onus was on me, right? I had complete control of my health. It was up to me to either stay healthy or get sick and die, right? And I say that in a very blunt way, but ultimately what it comes down to is you have the ability to keep yourself healthy. Every human being in here or in the United States is given that opportunity, right? And every person with CF has to seize that opportunity. My parents are still very highly involved. My mom and I still argue to this day about the best way to sterilize the nebs. We will never find common ground. I'm a big microwave guy. She likes the boil method. I think they've ruined that, and I have to buy more. No, but ultimately what it comes down to is for people with cystic fibrosis to have the understanding that they can control their care, and adult care gives them that opportunity. Pediatric providers give them the understanding of when that's going to happen and why it's going to happen.
Was there a time when you researched cystic fibrosis for yourself and not just hearing like what it is from your parents or from the doctors? Like, when did you learn about the gravity, I guess, of the disease?
The internet's a very scary place. The internet is a very scary place. I remember specifically to this day the first time I researched cystic fibrosis on the internet, and it terrified me, right? It absolutely horrified me. I was in high school. Now it happens, sometimes it'll happen to kids younger because they're really internet savvy. You know, the internet sort of grew up with me. So I remember thinking about it one day. I was like, maybe I'll look up cystic fibrosis. And I went to Wikipedia, which isn't a source, by the way. I don't know when it ever will be a source. Maybe one day. But I went to Wikipedia and I searched cystic fibrosis, and I scared the living shit out of myself. I saw, the first thing you see is the life expectancy, right? For some reason, a charity that is very involved in the cystic fibrosis community loves to pump out life expectancy data, right? That is the dumbest thing in the history of medicine, right? Life expectancy does not take into account the human element of the disease like we were talking about before. The life expectancy itself, I see it as a motivator, right? I see it as a motivator, something I'm going to overcome, right? Doesn't tell the whole picture. Just like the internet search that I learned later didn't tell the whole picture of CF. But there's a human element that research and studies and papers and the internet don't have, right? I always say to newly diagnosed parents or parents of a newly diagnosed kid, do not go to the internet. Cystic fibrosis in real life is a very different illness than you have on the internet. I mean, how many times have you diagnosed yourself with lymphoma or something? Just had a cold. It's happened to me quite a few times. Still here. Right? So ultimately what it comes down to is you have to live through the disease itself. You have to get hold of it, you have to educate yourself about the disease in positive ways from real sources. And I always say the best way to educate kids about the disease or family members or friends is by using treatments. Treatments are a very visual reminder of what the illness is. Right? And in my house, the rule is that I can only do my treatments, and I had to do my treatments in a common area. I never did them in my bedroom. Right? And the reason is because one day when I was about 4 or 5 years old, my dad came in to start the albuterol and put Thomas the Tank Engine on for me. He was a big Thomas fan. And put the nebulizer on, put the mask on my face, and then walked out of the room. He heard me cough, and then he had a moment. He was like, oh my God, I just left Gunnar in there all by himself. I have to go in there and sit with him while he does his treatments. Because this is now, his thing is now our thing as parents. And they translated that principle to family members, friends, cousins, whoever else came over to the house. I always ended up doing my treatments in the middle of gatherings at the house. Whenever a new friend came over from school, I started doing treatment. Because that was my parents' way of educating kids about the disease in a very visual way. And that ultimately led to me, I think, understanding, empowering myself to do treatments on my own in college eventually, and now today. But really what it did was it helped solidify the support system. So that when I did go to the internet, I had people to lean on.
You said you had the record of how many girls you kissed? How many? You didn't say how many exactly.
It's left to the annals of the Esiason history. Better left outside.
You mentioned how you told your buddies in school about your CF, but what about a relationship?
We can call my girlfriend and ask her. Relationships are interesting. But there's something that every person with CF should have the ability to do and to pursue. I think quite a few girlfriends. I finally have one that seems to be all right though. No, I think it's important to really be a good judge of character, right? And what it comes down to for me is seeing that there are people out there in the wild who will support me and people who will do anything to get me out of their life or, balk at my CF. And I've come to realize that if you're not going to support me in my endeavor with CF, then you're not going to be in my life. And I've become a very judgmental person as a result, but I think that's out of self-preservation, right? I've realized that I only want supportive people in my life who are going to help me conquer CF. And when I do go on dates or whatever, what I do is I always drop little hints. It's been a while since I've gone on like a first date or two, but I always look at as first dates as a job interview. Because I'm being serious. It's a job interview that works both ways. Because I got to give my personality and I got to get her personality too. So what I always do is I always drop little hints. And one hint is my pill case. I leave it on the table. And eventually when it comes time for dinner or eating or whatever, I will go for the pill case and I'll take the pills. And of course, the pills in CF are crazy. And the question always then happens, what are those? So then I begin to explain CF. And I always like to know right away whether or not that person is going to be supportive of me in my CF. Right? And the pills are a very, very visual reminder that something is happening. We always talk about the invisible illness, that's not visible. Right? So when it comes down to telling my CF in a very intimate situation like that, the pill case is my go-to. Then I also, it's very basic, I don't try to scare someone, I have CF, and I always say, don't go to the internet, whenever you have a question, I'm happy to answer them. But I have to be educated about the answers. So I can't just guess whenever I get a question.
Have you felt very isolated at a certain time in your life because of not being able to be friends with other people with CF except for virtually, and how did you deal with that if, when you wanted to reach out to other people?
Did everyone hear the question? Yeah. So I think CF by its nature of the cross-infection issue is very isolating. Just by the way it is. You can't go to a support group like cancer patients may or diabetes patients, whatever. You can't go and physically be with somebody and talk about your CF. But the internet, where there are many negatives, there is a significant positive in the fact that you can connect with CF patients. And there is a very, very cohesive adult CF online community. It's out there. And you may hear things that you don't want to hear, but you also hear a lot of supportive things too. Just like anything else, there's a lot of assholes in the world too. Be judgmental and figure out who's good for you and who's not. But I do think it's important for people with cystic fibrosis to communicate to some extent, which is why I like that one of the things that Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is doing is what's called Peer Connect, I think. So Cystic Fibrosis Peer Connect is a really good initiative by CFF, and so are the cons that they do. But I do think it's important to identify with other patients. I don't necessarily encourage people to go onto the internet searching for friends, because I do think it's important for people to have a life outside of CF as well. You don't want the disease to entirely consume you, right? You have to have a life and motivation outside of your treatments, outside of your care, outside of trips to the hospital. You have to have a reason to live, right? I think having a big, beautiful life is part of that reason to live. And talking with CF patients, I always consider them my CF friends and my real friends, whereas they're all just really good friends for me in general, but ultimately what it comes down to is that I have people to lay stuff on, they can lay stuff on me. And I think it's an important part for CF care, because really, in CF, there's three parts of care, right? There's three pillars of CF care. There's the respiratory health, the digestive health, and the mental health, right? And all three pieces are just equally as important, right? In order to have the best possible patient outcome, all three pieces of care have to be absolutely maximized. And I think talking to patients helps in that regard. Anything else? Oh, yeah.
So you're a hockey coach?
Yes.
And do your the kids on the team know that you have CF?
Yeah. It's pretty easy to find out that I have CF. In fact, there's a magazine in 1993 that had me on the cover of it. No, they do know that I have CF. I think it's, when people with CF do get to the working age, then comes the decision, do I tell the employer that I have CF, do I not tell the employer that I have CF? And by virtue of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we do have protection in those situations, as our social worker will tell you. The social worker, by the way, is the most important person in the clinic. I don't care what they're telling you. My kids do know that I have CF, and they're very supportive. They actually all wore CF stickers in their helmets this year. And they are also part of my support system too, right? I look at my high school hockey coaching as a passion project. I don't pay me very much. But it's a passion project, and it's a way for me to release the stress that comes with cystic fibrosis. I get to go on the ice for a couple hours every day with my kids, and that is really an escape entirely from CF. Because I don't have time to think about my coughs and how I'm feeling. All I have time to worry about is making them better to win a state championship and turn those boys into men, right? And that's my goal with coaching ice hockey. And they know that I have CF. They know that I'm coughing, right? And they know that they're learning from me as well. And I think it works both ways, right? I really think it does. And what they're getting out of it is they're seeing, we'll go back to the sports inspirational thing. That's what they're kind of getting that out of it. Whereas I'm getting out of the ability to help shape America's future, right? And by working with kids. And I think it's important for coworkers and people like that to know that you have CF so that they can support you. Right? I think it's very important for people around you that you're with every single day to have the opportunity to support you. And my kids do that just like my friends and my colleagues do as well, just in different ways.
Like how old are they?
That's cool.
It seems like a lot of your coping strategies are to let people around you know and to gather, kind of make your support system. You also have this online presence with other people as a support system. Do you see the opposite in people? Do you see people, taking the opposite approach and trying to stay kind of, in the closet or reclusive or?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I have many coping mechanisms, right? One of my coping mechanisms is to talk about my CF and feel like I'm bringing people along the way with me. My coping mechanism is like, I'll just unplug and play video games for 3 hours. Right? I'll just turn on the Xbox and that will be a way that I cope with CF. And that's a very common thing for people with CF to do, is they will, lock themselves away and deal with their emotions in different ways. They'll just totally tune out and just dive into something. And that is very, very healthy to do. Right? As long as it doesn't infringe the rest of the day in your liveliness. But I do think that some people do have a difficult time with sharing their CF because they may not be totally educated about it, they may not be totally comfortable talking about it, which is why I think it comes to the care teams to make the patients and the families feel very, very confident about dealing with something that is very, very complex, right? You want to leave, how many people in here want to leave the doctor's office feeling good about the next future of their kid, right? You want to feel good about the next 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 80 days, right, until the next visit. And it's the doctors and the care team and the nurses and social workers and the nutritionists' responsibility to make you feel that way, right? But it only works if you're telling them that it's happening, right? If you have an issue, if you have questions, I always say it's important to ask as many questions as possible until you feel comfortable enough to leave the clinic, right? You don't want to leave the clinic having something to question, right? And I think understanding the root of CF, the causes of things, then builds confidence for kids to talk about it. And ultimately what it comes down to is having the ability to educate yourself about it and patience to do so. Oh, yeah.
I got one quick one.
Yeah.
You growing up playing a lot of sports, were there a lot of conflicts with kids being sick around you, on the bench, next to you on the field, stuff like that, where parents, it's different keeping a kid home from school, but I see parents kind of push their kids to a game that shouldn't be there, and either as a coach or as a player, or how your parents kind of handled that. Was it not sitting next to the kid on the bench, or was it actually having that conversation with the parent at the time where the kid maybe not understand what cystic fibrosis is, and then opening that up to both their kid and your kid? It's kind of like an issue.
Yeah, it is like that. But I still deal with that today immensely. What it comes down to, I think, is I always say you never know who you're sitting next to in the movie theater, right? You never know if that person has cystic fibrosis, has strep throat, is totally healthy. You never know who that person is. And there's only so much that we can control. right? It's all about mitigating risk where possible. Mitigating cross-infection risk by not hanging out with other people with CF or being careful in the clinic and stuff like that. That's all very important. You're mitigating risk in that respect. But out there in the open world, you have no idea what the next person over is doing. And I think there's a balance between feeling overprotective about a kid and not exposing him to a number of things. There were plenty of days when the flu was going around my high school or my middle school, and my parents kept me home for a long weekend. But that was fine. I was always the kind of kid that I would never want to stay home from sports, though, and we would just go and we would deal with it. Now, these days, parents are really over-competitive, and they live vicariously through their kids and stuff, so they always want to go to sports, things like that. But ultimately, what it comes down to is just being smart. It comes down to the kid to learn from a very young age who to stay around and who not to stay around. If a kid, he's got to know to look out for a runny nose, for kids who look pale or whatever. You pick up on those cues at a very young age, and you know how to use them later in life. Right now, now that I coach high school hockey, I really do kind of put myself in harm's way because high school kids are disgusting. Gross. It's true. How many people have high school kids here? No. Whenever I have a kid that's sick, I sort of remove themselves, and that's one of the reasons that I do think it's important for them to know that I have CF, is because they'll remove themselves from me in a little bit of a way, right? Or I'll just move myself away from the kid these days. And I always tell that if kids are very, very sick, then don't come to practice, right? There's a balance between feeling very, very sick and powering through something. At the tail end of a cold, you can get back out there and start getting back into playing shape. But when the first 2 days of being sick, when you're really contagious, that's when it's worth it to stay home, and that's when it's worth it to be a little overprotective. So it's a little bit of a long, convoluted answer, but what it comes down to is just recognizing where you are, not sharing water bottles, washing your mouthpiece every day after practice, washing your equipment and getting that disinfecting spray and stuff like that. That's all very important to staying healthy in the athletic realm. One more.
So you mentioned the Nintendo when you became the business negotiator. Did you continue that as perhaps more treatments came on or anything like that?
Did I use them as bargaining methods? No, my parents nipped that in the bud pretty quickly. I think that one specific moment was such a traumatizing moment for my dad that he was willing to give in. But the way that I became disciplined with adding new treatments on and taking more time out of the day to do treatments was really the iron fist, right? And I mean that as a way, my parents were very, very, very discipline-oriented when it came to treatments. I was never allowed to miss. Not on holidays, not on birthdays, never, right? Because my parents, they realized that CF treatments are a Band-Aid like we talked about, and that if you miss a treatment at a young age, you may not realize the repercussions in the here and now. You do realize the repercussions when it becomes a habit, right? When it becomes a habit and you learn that it's okay to miss treatment here or there, later in life it becomes a habit. Oh, maybe I'm not going to do treatments tonight if they're going out. Or maybe I'm not going to do treatments this morning because I have a big day at work or something, right? For me, I can probably count the number of times on one hand that I've missed a treatment in the past 10 years, right? It's very, very critical to be just hard on it, right? And some kids are better than it than others initially, and some will push back, but the way that my parents treated that was they just made it a family time, right? Treatments became a social time, and that's how they really, really made it a cohesive part of my daily routine. So, all right, so we're quickly going to take a selfie. It's the millennial in me. I know the AV guy in the back knows what I'm talking about. All right, so ready? On 3, you want to say cure CF, okay? If I can get my camera working. There we go. There we go. All right, ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Cure CF. All right, guys, thanks so much for having me.
To Vermont, and we wish you had more time here, but hopefully it'll be a nice morning tomorrow morning. But a little small, some Vermont stuff instead of Boston College.
still around, so feel free to stop by some of the tables, and thank you for coming. And if you could leave your name tag just on the table, that would be great, so that we'll collect those after. Okay? Thank you. Have a great night.